Hey, what's up, guys? So today I'm just gonna kind of go over all the elemental pairings, what each pair is good at, what the hybrid of that pair does. This isn't really how to build those paired decks. It's just kind of what do you want to look at when you're looking at these synergies. What does each kind of element pair well with in each other element? So, like thunder and water, you'll see has good discard synergy, stuff like that. Just what do they do well together? Are these like the deck archetypes that are going to be staple elite? No, but it's kind of where did the overlap, like where did each kind of element mesh with every other element? So with that, we're just gonna jump over into TTS, and I have all my little pairings saved, and we'll start off with Thunder. So here we have, whoops, our kind of Thunder Water. So Thunder Water, as I mentioned, has the discard synergy with Spark and Typhlant. You also have cards like Lycavolt, you have Ivory, all kind of disrupt your opponent's hands directly. So that's a really good archetype. If you're trying to do Water Thunder discard, probably a good way to start. And then Water and Thunder both have the only two Elestrals that recover on cast your spirits, which really helps them go for a longer control game because you can play Quackles and Sluggles. They might get destroyed away from defense position, but you've netted a bunch of extra spirits back to your deck, so it slows your potential game down if you're trying to do something weird combo-y or just trying to play a long late game deck. Sluggo and Quackle really help with that. So Thunder and Water are very good kind of together with a control setting. They don't really do much other than just be very control-y together. There's not a lot of other overlap in those colors. The next color pairing, I forgot a color pairing here. So it's Thunder Fire. Sorry, I'm doing this at the same time. We have a lot of control and a lot of aggro directly in these elements. So we have attacking aggressive plays like Thunderbolt of Zeus, forcing your opponent to expend an additional spirit when they attack. And you have Necruff, forcing your opponent to expend an additional spirit when it destroys something in battle, just like Thunderbolt of Zeus. Creates like an attack aggro synergy plan. Toxian, it's kind of a burn damage card, so you have Eruption and Toxian in these elements to represent it. So Toxian, when you get Thunder on it, expends 1 from your opponent directly. Eruption forces your opponent to expend 3 directly. Very synergistic, it's direct face damage versus attack aggro damage. And then also Thunder, you'll find a lot of control cards like Sonicore, Riceros, etc. And same thing in Fire. So Fire and Thunder are the only two elements that have cards that prevent your opponent from attacking the turn that they're played, with Phylacny and Riceros. Lena and Sonicore prevent your opponent from playing runes, which is, the majority of the removal in the game right now. Sonicore stops counter runes. Leonite stops invoke runes. So you can probably do a Thunder Fire control deck. I personally play a Thunder Fire control deck. I find it a lot of fun. You might not. But yeah, Thunder and Fire Control and Thunder Fire Aggro are kind of the two archetypes that they both kind of fall into. There's not a ton of aggressive Thunder cards, but there's enough to support a Fire, focused aggressive deck. Put it that way. Next, we have Thunder and Wind. So, Thunderstorm and Tornado. Very good, efficient rune removal. You also have P-Gust to destroy runes. And, these two elements are the best at just getting rid of runes. Falcane destroys runes. Stratomoth bounces runes. Thunderstorm destroys runes. Your Imperial can target back row. Stuff like that. And the other thing that they're both really good at, which isn't super synergistic with each other, is they're both elements that are really good at getting to their 3-drop with a special ascend. So for like Stratomoth, you go Nimbug and Sirikun right away, and then you go to Stratomoth right away. For Imperial, you go into Signetric from anything, and then go right into Imperial right away. You can go into Pentair and win by crashing into a bunch of things. Or my face down card here, you could play a Volt Tempest deck. So these elements are really good at getting out to your 3-drop. Volt Tempest is a great 3-drop if you're running both elements combined, where something like Pentair is a little expensive on the wind, Imperial is extremely expensive on the thunder. Volt Tempest is a nice little kind of niche in the middle point. So I think Wind and Thunder are really good at getting to their boss Elestrals. There's not a ton of direct protection for the boss Elestrals, but you have all this rune disruption. So that's kind of, I think, where you go with the Wind Thunder deck, is trying to go big and stop counter runes and stuff like that. And maybe with Full Tempest, you get out Zeus so you can't get it targeted as well. And then last in the Thunder category, Thunder Earth. So Thunder Earth has a lot of really efficient removal with Boom Bat, destroying Elestrals, Earthquake, destroying Elestrals, and it's got some utility. So it's got Ryceros to kind of stall, it's got Titanosaur so you can see your opponent's hand to make the right play. If you're playing Thunder Earth, it's probably going to be some kind of stally wall deck where you're just kind of dropping out some stuff, making sure that you can kind of answer your opponent's cards efficiently. I think you're playing a little bit of a control efficiency deck where you're just kind of, your opponent does something for 2 spirits, you do something for 1 to stop it. You play Ryceros in turn 1, your opponent can't attack into it. You maybe go into something in 2. You play Titanostock and some counter runes, stop your opponent from playing. There's not a ton of overlap in Thunder Earth because generally you can kind of play Earthquake or Boom Bat. If you play both, you're doing a lot of less removal. So it's a little bit of toss-up. I don't think there's a ton of synergy there, but they're both very good at being efficient removals. So that might be somewhere you go with those elements. All right, as we move on, we'll go into our water plus another element setup. So starting with water fire. Water and fire both have direct burn damage. So eruption directly to your opponent, Krakatuga directly to your opponent, and you can get Krakatuga out turn 1 somewhat consistently with Tadpuff. And then you have Javlantis, which if it destroys defense position things, it burns your opponent. Is water, fire, burn a super intensely good strategy? No, but water does give you some big defense like Krakatuga, so you can kind of set up a wall to throw your things over, as opposed to trying to attack and burn at the same time. I don't see it seeing a ton of play, but that's what they do well together. They also are both very sticky on board. So Foamy, it gets destroyed in battle. You go find out any other water 1-drop you want from your deck. And then Earth Scout, same effect as Foamy, except it's limited to Earth Scout, Urzmog, or Ursir for your search. But it's a way to kind of make sure you stick them on board, and then next turn, unless they use a good removal card on these guys, you're getting another Celestial into play, so you can go to your 2s pretty consistently. So I think Fire and Water are going to be really good decks. Also, you can throw Inferics into the mix, which will return itself. Are going to be probably the best 2 elements for getting to a 2-drop very consistently. So with Foamy and Earth Scout, you'll always have that extra, thing back into play. Good 2-drops are in these colors are like Capricorn or Leonite. The more 2-drops that we get in water and fire, I think the better that kind of that sticky mentality is going to be, because sometimes it's hard to get to those 2-drops efficiently without losing a lot, and these kind of help with that. Next, we have Water Wind. So Water and Wind are kind of our attack directly cards with Zephyrog. Now, just like I mentioned with Krakatuga, you can use Tadpuff to get this out very early and easily. It's low stats, but it attacks directly, so as long as you protect it with other cards, your opponent's not really answering it. And Chrysaor, it's a huge stat line, a little bit harder to get out than Zephyrog, but also attacks directly and gets you some, wind back. So, wind, water, attack directly, maybe that's a thing. I'm not really sure. And we have Foamy here again. So another thing about Foamy is you don't really want to attack into a Foamy because your opponent can then get any watered 1-drop they want from their deck and get any spirit from their spirit deck onto it, so they can misenchant their Mustation with a Thunder to get out their Thunder drops, etc. So Foamy and Hydrake are both cards you don't want to attack into, usually. Hydrake will go into Twindra, which gets your opponent to Pantera faster. Foamy, you don't know what they're going to bring out with that Foamy. It might really hurt you. It's kind of a toolbox water card in that sense. So Wind Water kind of says, just, don't attack me, bro. Or kind of gives you the threat of you don't want to be attacked because your opponent's not sure what you might get out. And that's kind of where Water Wind is. It's either attack directly or just kind of like, maybe you don't attack me. We'll see how that turns out. And then last we have Water and Earth together. So Water, Earth both have pretty high defense cards. A lot of Earth cards just have high stats in general. So you have like Galaxy, which is a 2/5. It swaps your defense, your attack, so that's a good payoff for high defense decks. Spinif is high defense. Your opponent doesn't want to attack it. Maybe you misenchant it later on with some water, forcing your opponent to deal with it later on. And now they have to attack your Spinif. Now they have 0 attack. That's synergy. And then Barabog at 3/7. Pretty solid defense line. Again, being a Water X card, you can Tadpuff it out pretty consistently. and it can just sit in defense along with some of the other cards in water, or not water, and yeah, water, earth. Maybe you splash some wind in there for a Spanish sect. They like sitting in defense. Bearbog will sit in defense and do damage to your opponents all day. 7 defense, it matches most of the other 2 drops, so it doesn't get attacked over super easily, and will force your opponent to take some damage as you sit there. So a high defense water earth deck might be in a play that you go into. And then lastly, water and earth are both the only 2 elements right now that do a lot of stuff with their underworld. So Caprigal pulls out any of your 1-cost waters from your underworld into play right away. Driflora and also Pandasin return earth cards and invoke runes respectively from your underworld to your hand, so you can get stuff back and reuse things. I think if there's any kind of underworld focused deck, it's going to be in that water earth package. Unfortunately, we don't have ways to mill cards into our underworld to ourselves yet. But if we ever do get the ability to mill our own decks, water earth I think is going to be the self mill kind of underworld reanimation, pulling value back from underworld kind of elements. We'll see what we get in future support in other sets, but that's kind of what they do well together. All right, and next we will move on into our earth and blah. And you'll notice now it's like 2, it was 4-3-2 because we've already went through the other wind pairings, the other elements, if that's not clear. So what does wind and earth do well together? Wind and earth, again, kind of like the water and wind, are kind of don't attack me right now situations. You know, Hydreic, you don't want to attack into Hydreic consistently because they'll get Twindra out, into Pantera faster. Spinif, you don't really want to attack into with something with high attack, but it requires something high attack to get rid of it, because now it's going to have 0 attack, and your opponent could answer it on their turn. So, again, they kind of do the stall, don't attack me, bro. But where I really see a lot of like Thunderwind overlap is just good stats. Airmare 4-5 has a total of 9 stats combined. The highest stat line in a 1-drop is a 4-5. So it can attack all right, it can defend really well. Rumbagem is the second highest total stat line base at 8 with 4 and 4. Again, 4 is good attack, 4 is good defense, and it has upside. You go search for something. So you kind of see Mono Earth right now being a deck with a lot of like just big stats tempo kind of plays where you can't really attack into things sufficiently. And that's kind of where Wind and Earth do together. You know, Wind also has like Sorlet, which has a high attack stat and synergy. You can get a Sirikun out really easily in Wind, which has a high defense stat. I think a big stat Earth Wind deck might see some play. Right now we see just kind of big stat synergy in Earth. We'll see if that continues. Maybe it'll splash Wind in the future. I don't know. And kind of a weird sub-theme. So the Wind Earth hybrid card, Spinasect here, has the ability it can attack in defense position, as though it's an attack, and if it does, it uses defense for calculations. And of note, both of its runes add defense. So 2 defense on Bag of Winds, 3 defense from Scythe of Demeter. There might be some synergy there to take a look at, but there's not a ton of defense matters in these elements besides the Spinasect. But they do have big stat lines, so big stat lines plus more big stat line equals a bigger stat line. And if you get your Spinasect out with Bag of Winds and Scythe of Demeter out, it's going to be a 14 defense, can't be targeted by runes, and will recover you some elements. Might be good. It's worth taking a look at, worth trying at the very least. And our last but not least is... We did water. Is it fire? We didn't do fire yet. There we go. So, fire and earth. Together, they go pretty wide. So Ignectar, you get out 3 Ignectars right away. You can kind of go into your 2s maybe attack with a bunch of little guys. Going wide. Viserys also goes wide. So you play Viserys on the field, it attacks something, destroys it, you get another Viserys out. Maybe use Alto the Stars to put it into attack position to attack right away next. Now you have 3 Viserys out. So they're good at going wide. Going wide is good for either doing damage, having a more stable board, or getting into your Ascensions easier. So you might see some Fire Earth go wide strategies. I don't know if these strategies go together unless we get some more Fire Earth synergies in the future. But they both go wide at the moment. Like if you want to go with a big wide board consistently, Ignectar Viserys are probably your most 2 consistent options. And then Fire and Earth are also really good at getting your artifacts out. So Festus, You can go disenchant it, search for an artifact in your deck, add it to your hand. It's rowdier. When you normal cast it, you get to go search an artifact from your deck and add it to your hand. So if you're playing any kind of deck strategy that cares about artifacts consistently, it's probably going to run Sprouter and Hephaestus pretty regularly, because they're going to go search your artifacts for you that you need for whatever you're playing. So that's, potential route. Earthfire and like maybe an artifact toolbox package could be a deck worth checking out. Then next we have our Fire Wind. Now, if you see Eruption Exaltair, you might be thinking, if you're doing a lot of the playtesting with us, oh no, that's Summer Winds. So Summer Winds is a kind of mid-range deck that focuses on using wind as a toolbox, and then it'll just throw a bunch of really burst, eruption, and exaltair damage at your face and burn you really fast out of nowhere. So that's what Fire and Wind is really good at. It's kind of really good at just direct damage to your face, watch out kind of potential. Exaltair does a lot of damage. If it sticks, it's going to do even more damage. Eruption, direct damage to face. The other thing that Wind and Fire do really well together is they're really good at attacking. So in this case, I have Blazarus here, which attacks twice. I have Gladestill here, which could attack twice, but also it's just a huge attacker at 2 on its own. As well as you have things like Solar and Necro, which have high attack stats. So Fire Wind, it's going to be very aggressive combo. And the Wind cards really synergize well with the Fire cards, because Fire is pretty aggressive, but it's really focused on being either super aggressive or super controlling, whereas Wind is kind of toolboxy. You can kind of pick what you need in the moment, use it, run it out, and kind of do it that way. So I think, if you're playing Fire Wind, you're playing pretty aggressive to some extent, and you're going to be able to just kind of burn directly at their face out of nowhere if you're running some of the right decks and some of the strategies that we've been messing with. And the last thing of note, I just want to say Volcaries and Tectorus with the Fire Earth synergy. These cards don't synergize well together, although they have the same ability with their respective element. Because they require their element on the field, they're a little bit awkward to use together, but they do seem like they would pair well together. So that's all the element pairings. I hope that kind of gave you a little bit of insight into what each element does well with compared to the other elements together, where their kind of overlap is. Maybe that gave you some deck ideas. Maybe it gave you some insight onto what decks we've been running, like especially that Summer Winds deck, as I mentioned, that Jay Johnny made. But yeah, take a look at what you like. Because of all the balance changes we've had before Kickstarter release, before the official launch of the project, of the game, there's the decks right now are all over the place. Experiment, see what works for you, see what works against stuff, see what your counters are, and just mess with your decks, see what you like. That's all. Other than that, I'm going to sign off here. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you like the video, please let me know. Subscribe, comment. Subscription's free. I really appreciate it. Boost my ego. I make a ton of ELESTRALS content. Some of it is outdated now. But hey, check it out. I appreciate that. You guys have a great day. Have a good one. And go fund the Kickstarter, please. It's super fun.